Here's the video that I was going to do anyway. Mythic Plus repeating the mistakes of the Sepulchre of the first ones. Yeah. It is in our back burner right now because there's other things that are more important to do. Yeah. But essentially what I kind of realized, right, is there's a similarity. Like, Sepulchre was just nerf, 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 nerf. And Mythic Plus this season is just nerf, 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 nerf. But it's actually, I think, a bit more than that. And that's where... And what happened is, right, I thought about that. I thought about Nawa's tweet about the just additional, not even quality of mechanics, but additional quantity of mechanics, like on, you know, every trash pack and all the stuff throughout Mythic Plus. And then I thought about Vault of the Incarnates. Because the one thing that I've realized with Vault, now obviously we don't play in Mythic right now. We are 5 out of 8 Heroic. We will be 6 in just about no time. We got Kurog down to like 20%. No, 9%? Or is it 20?
No, we got him to 20% because we started to take a couple of unnecessary deaths to the ice balls because apparently some players in our guild have never played bullet hells before. Don't know who that could be.
We cannot all be big weebs.
And that's what's wrong with you all. Anyway, yes. We will get Kurog down like Monday, no problem. But I actually have, because you can jump into it after this, but I did collate a bunch of my thoughts on the bosses to talk about how, like, with some reflection, how, and after a reclear, how good some of the bosses in Vault actually are from like a, let's say, those are pretty good. It felt fun to like me thinking down going, okay, how do these mechanics work? What way is this actually designed? So if you'll stick around for that, it actually is interesting. They've done what I can only describe as very, very good traditional game design, which they've always done a decent job of, but this time I'm like, oh, I see it super clearly now.
And really, that's why I'm thinking about this in the context of M+, because I was thinking about Vault of the Incarnates, and, you know, at the time, we'd done all 8 bosses on normal, we were progging through Heroic, and the thing about the bosses is they're simple, right? They are pretty simple bosses. And when you ratchet it over to Heroic, all that I can say is the fights feel just right for normal mode. Yeah. And in Heroic mode, they tighten up the tuning, but they don't just throw random shit. Like, I found that any additional Heroic mechanics, they're either just stuff's appropriately harder and you can no longer, like, be sloppy, or it's, you know, an additional mechanic or something like that is very thematic with the fight. But overall, like, the overarching thing is simplicity and the clarity of the challenge that you must overcome.
It's exactly that. It's clarity of challenge.
The more that it's just like, you know, this so many mechanics and things going on, it's like the less clarity you get, like signal to noise ratio. And I think the issue then with Mythic Plus, as I was thinking about it, is there's a lot of mechanical density, a lot of noise, and because you're always scaling harder and harder and harder and harder, well, actually, all the noise is signal, and you're just getting killed. Which that's basically what I thought was like really interesting, I suppose, to me. So clearly, what happened is they looked at SOFO, and they realized, like, okay, what is the problem? What's overwhelming people? I can say from our perspective, like, we adored that raid.
It was very good.
Did we kill J-Lore Heroic?
No, we didn't. No, we didn't.
Yeah, we just kind of bounced out of the game after J-Lore Normal.
Yeah, we killed J-Lore Normal, and then everyone in the guild were like, do you want to do Heroic? And everyone went, no.
Yeah, we all just kind of went, Shadowlands. And then whenever Season 4 rolled around, that was Mythic Plus time.
Yeah, and everyone's like, whatever. We've seen the expansion, whatever.
Yeah, Season 4 was cool.
We've come back, and I can't even, like... I obviously don't want to show our parses, but the difference in... I haven't compared our logs to, like, Shadowlands, but the difference in the same players, largely, between one expansion is insane. And this isn't because everyone's suddenly gotten really good. It's because there's so much... Fights are so much better designed, so much cleaner, and there's so much more actual enjoyment of the game that people are clearly trying in a different way. And it also comes down to the talents working very, very well with how people understand their own toolkit, as opposed to things being nailed on at different parts. It's honestly kind of crazy. Kind of crazy. I like it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Me too. And I suppose that great change in clarity, maybe clarity is the best word, that happened as we moved into VOI, I think has perhaps not happened as much in Mythic. And this is for a few reasons. So to just recap some of the reasons, I mean, first up, you can just see it here in these numbers. Now this is like the start of January, so these are old numbers, but they
January was the
yeah, they do indicate like the state of balance at the time. If you're looking at people who are +1ing or +2ing a 24 Keystone, it's only happening in Burial Grounds and Court of Stars, right? You look at people who are doing, +3ing a 20, only in Burial Grounds. +1ing, double the people in Burial Grounds, 2 Ruby Life Pools, right? So massive disparities in clear rates. And I guess that just got me all thinking, and the thing started to click together. For some of the reasoning, I think a point of design I'm going to talk about pretty soon was then further compounded on by a number of changes that Blizzard made. So the first thing, of course, is we scale up harder, right? After a +10 Keystone, health and damage scale by 10% per Keystone level. It used to be 8. Now, that means that in Shadowlands, a +15 had a 172 health damage modifier, but that's 198 in Dragonflight, which certainly, yeah, it's more in Dragonflight. It's not tremendously more, but these things compound. And also, in Dragonflight, your rewards scale up to +20. So in a way, it's almost as if +20 is the new +15 in terms of like maxing your vault, which is going.
Goal, yes.
Yeah, it's going to be the fundamental gearing goal of many people.
It's the whole thing where they took the Mythic plus treadmill, and they elongated it and increased the incline.
Yeah.
If you want a real world analogy, that's more or less what they did.
So +20 in Shadowlands was a 300% enemy HP, enemy damage modifier. It's 380% in this expansion, and that just gets bigger and bigger, like at Mythic +25, which I mean, I'll never be anywhere fucking close to that, but at a +25, it's 487 in Shadowlands and 673 in this expansion. So that stuff's scaling harder, but then there is the fact that Blizzard scaled player health and damage taken by 40% shortly before the expansion came out, but they did not change healing. Basically, healers felt too powerful. Now, you may be thinking, and like I'm maining a healer this time around, too powerful? Oh no, what a problem. It actually is a massive problem that's really bad for healers.
It wasn't that you were too powerful, that's the interesting part.
They considered it to be.
In terms of the player experience,
yeah,
it wasn't that you were too powerful, is that you had a lot of power, but you couldn't spread it out. You could heal someone to full, but because of damage taken was a lot higher, people would die faster. So it was a game of pure ping pong.
Yeah, so they had to scale it up. And this is a lesson that I think they've probably known for a long time, but it was very profoundly felt in Siege of Orgrimmar. Healing was super powerful back then, especially Disc, to the point where Paragon, I mean, man, rip Paragon, but, they got their Garrosh 10 heroic world first. 1 healing. 1 healing with a My Little Pony wee chorus.
Oh, yeah. Remember that video? Yeah.
Strong shit.
I remember Bronies.
But the problem then is, if healers are that powerful, then how does Blizzard challenge a healer? By turning it into health bar whack-a-mole.
By killing the tank immediately.
Which is what we call certain parts of the Kurog fight. No. But all of this essentially then just meant that healing is pretty challenging, and we've moved away from some of that like Legion-esque feeling of tanks being fucking superheroes who, are just like completely dominating. So all of this has led us into a fairly interesting position then, where things are scaled to be hard and there's great mechanical density. And that's where I basically realized something, because I was just thinking about design fundamentals, and maybe the best thing I could do is just like read from the script or something like that. So here you go.
Early access to video.
Early access. So with balance now moving in the right direction, is there a lesson to learn? What level of difficulty is actually fun in World of Warcraft? And this is where we're seeing Vault of the Incarnates is doing well. Is it a hyper fast-paced competitive game in its texture, or is it a fun fantasy adventure with your friends? And I think that ends up being part of the trouble, because World of Warcraft, at its harder levels, is a genuinely hard game. It's mechanically hard. It requires a lot of meta knowledge. It requires a lot of specific knowledge for the content that you're doing, fast reaction times, great coordination between players.
A bunch of focus is required too.
Yeah,
it's a hard-ass game to keep playing for a long period of time.
And that's actually one of the big things, because well, we'll cover the pacing soon, but it's a big strength, in my opinion, of raids over dungeons. But that's just opinion. So it throws mechanics at you all the time, and in many cases, they are super, super punishing. Mythic Plus especially, because not only do you not time your key, it depletes, so you've got to invest more time to get your key back up to snuff. So in the end, what's fun? A hyper-hardcore experience, or one that is rewarding and balanced for fun first over raw challenge. I would then ad-lib, even if that is at the expense of esports being as hard as possible. So what I then mean is that like some challenges are really fun. And I think this is from the good line from the bio of Candace Thomas, who used to work as an encounter designer, I believe, on Warcraft. I think she's now at Supercell. But a designer's job is kind of like to have a boss lose to the player convincingly. Yeah. Right?
That's a good way to put it.
And in the process of losing convincingly, the boss poses a really fun challenge for you to overcome. Now, let's extend that ethos to mob packs. And that's where basically the dots in my head started to like connect. Because on the one hand, Mythic Plus incentivizes speed, even though the game actually incentivizes speed anyway. Tanks were doing large pools back in Halls of Reflection and Pit of Sauron, getting people killed because they wanted to get their loot faster. Because if you kill the dungeon quicker, you'll get your loot quicker.
And this is a case of Blizzard taking what is a natural like emerging incentive and adding gameplay incentive on top of that, which is like, it's fine. You could argue it is pushing a little bit too hard on that thing, which I think I don't want to say the resounding response, but a resounding response from a section of the player base, which is honestly, if I imagine it's going to be a lot of people who are watching this, because I see chat and our comments being M+, shouldn't have a timer, etc.
Yeah, like I really view our job to sort of be like the everyman for the game. Like there's so many people who are streamers and stuff, and you know, they've completely crested the hill of, you know, just being completely amazing at the game. Yeah. But like, we don't play in a mega hardcore guild. We play with our online friends and have fun. I think, you know, just like everybody else, but maybe not as seriously. And maybe that ends up casting a wide enough net that like, hopefully we can, you know, kind of advocate for things that a lot of people find useful. But then here's the thing, right? We're incentivizing speed. But also we're overloading trash mobs with mechanics because we want to incentivize very tactical, precise play. And that is not always a bad thing. I remember doing Cataclysm Heroics on launch when undergeared. I was a hunter at the time, right? I believe survival, you know, you could have Scorpid Sting and your trap so you could double CC. And that was so much fun. I mean, the Halls of Origination, I loved that dungeon, which doesn't seem to be what a lot of people thought at the time, because it was an awful pugging experience, but playing it in a pre-made, it was great, because back then, right, the trash was important. If you didn't CC mobs, you would die. And it led to this amazing group experience. These dungeons, they felt like little mini raids. It was really, really, really fun. Now, here's the problem. Cataclysm, the design of Cataclysm Heroics, so that feeling of going through a dungeon, CCing mobs, kind of not going, you know, fast, more going precision, that really does go against the timer. And that's where I think it gets kind of interesting. So I say, sure, the timer nudges you to play harder, but solving a challenge fast is more a display of already learned mastery than it is learning to solve that challenge in the first place. So now a whole bunch of... There's just a lot to, I think, the way that it's making really trash also be the boss, because the trash is more and more important as it gets harder, as it gets more mechanics. That's where it gets really, really, really interesting. Yeah. And that's where a fun dichotomy comes in, where for a lot of people, maybe more traditional players, they see dungeons as having trash and bosses. And those things are not equal. Whereas in Mythic Plus, it's actually not like that, depending on if it's a tyrannical or a fortified week. And in a way that does make sense, because hard bosses versus hard trash, that's two different textures of gameplay. But then for fortified to be a challenge, those, you know, the ads that are being scaled up by fortified, they need to be armed with movesets that make them worthy of being the main feature of a dungeon, right? They're the replacement for full fat boss difficulty. So then you're in a situation where, like, is that fun? a world where it's like necessitated that the trash has to almost feel like a mini boss. It's just very much like very different to, say, running through a dungeon in FF14, where it's like you kill the boss and we pull 5 fucking trash packs together,
wall to wall,
which is just like not particularly fun, to be clear.
Yeah, where they started going, okay, well, this is now, and that's a part where I think there's no timer necessary there, because the natural incentive is time, because people are doing roulettes and want through as fast as possible. So tanks will wall to wall, and then there's some in inter-community fighting around that, but it's like they put walls strategically so they know, okay, well, tanks can pull wall to wall and it won't be a problem. And that's part of the design, to go, okay, well, here's the experience of you run in, you smash all your AoE buttons and you go to sleep, and then it's all dead, and then you do the boss, which is fun and interesting. But then it's like there's a surprising amount of similarities, because it's 2 different modes of play in the same thing, like you're talking about. And I think it's down to Blizzard to be able to figure out how to make the actual trash feel a little bit more fun, because I think there's definitely a lot of elements that feel outside of traditional World of Warcraft and feel like a new genre of play, which is, I think, having the trash actually feel like a challenge is fine. It's just a different form of challenge, where it's not a challenge to do the boss mechanics correctly, it's a challenge to use your CC correctly, it's a challenge to interrupt correctly, be that individually or be that in a rotation, if you need kick rotations for stuff at high enough difficulties, and also for tanks to pull as much as they need, etc. So I think it's just getting the actual balance of that down right. But you're also right, there is a dichotomy of people going, but trash is trash.
Yeah.
Which is one of the fundamental problems of Blizzard ultimately deciding, we are changing how the game works, we're changing the language, we're changing the design language, and players not catching up with that, because players are like, but this isn't the way I liked it before, which I think is ultimately an frustrating kind of place for them to be in. I don't really know a resolution, but I think there's a little bit of the grass is greener on the other side, I think.
Oh, totally. And,
for a lot
and that's
of people,
like some of the point here. It's really hard to design a one-size-fits-all system. Like, Mythic Plus is a system that covers a lot of gameplay, and it's a real challenge to get something of that scope right. Yeah. As in, it works for every player.
Yeah, it's like as an example of, I guess, natural decision-making and natural difficulty scaling is, do you CC a mob in a categoric, or do you know, well, we've got a monk, we've got a warlock, we've got another monk, we've got another monk, we can just ring a pace them forever, or we can like chain leg sweeps and chain AoE stuns to keep them down. So it's can we actually do that? Which I think makes it more of an interesting overall, group experience, but not a pug experience, because that's a lot of minor coordination. In the same way that our guild on Dethea ads, we figured out how to do them, because we went, okay, we've got a DK in the first group for Gorefriend, we've got a DK in the second group for A-Bomb Limb, we've got leg sweeps in each group, done, sorted. That's fun to do in Mythic Plus, but it's not fun to do in Pugs, which is where a lot of people experience M+, especially people who don't like it, experience that, so they don't get to see the upsides of playing it quote-unquote properly, as the way developers more or less likely intend, which means you've got this schism of experience, which is influencing, it's almost like 2 different lens on the same gameplay, where I'm sure if you brought up a lot of those criticisms to someone who plays a substantial amount of M+ in Pugs, they'll go, that's not a problem, or we like this, but you bring it up to people who don't like it, or Pug primarily, and they'll go, no one ever interrupts, or stuns, or uses their defensives, tanks pull without caring about mana, or caring about who's like bleeding out with Grievous, and you're like, well, okay, well that's 2 different experiences, so you have to kind of get both of them feeling good. Duh.
And then you have to think about, right, World of Warcraft's a casual game.
Or is it? Yes.
Yeah, so I was kind of baiting on purpose with that.
Yeah.
But World of Warcraft was really successful, in part because it was dramatically more accessible than the MMORPGs that came before it.
Yeah.
If you don't know what that means, go look up like Ultima Online and EverQuest 1 and death penalties. Because like those changes in WoW were a pretty big thing for the time.
Full baby game like.
And then, you look at like a lot of Classic doing super well, and look, there's lots of great play there. I mean, people who have got those fights down on even the private servers, right? Like those Algalon kills are pretty damn incredible. But I think I mean, it's commonly understood that WoW has got more complex over time.
That's one thing I find.
And VOI getting a bit less complex seems to have resulted in a very fun raid.
I was thinking about this from the context of trying to just remember through my time in Mythic and Taurus. And I swear to God, there are times where I feel like Heroic Vault's harder than Mythic and Taurus ever was.
Really?
Some of that might just be because I'm remembering things kind of differently, because that was a long ass time ago now. But it is mostly like there's so many more small things, and players are so much better that I think it feels easier. But I think the player skills since Legion has shot up dramatically. It's just that not everyone's has shot up.
That's going to be hard.
It's that you now have a wider gap between skill in player base.
And that's where we run into something.
Yeah.
So, awkward because I have a Biscoff crunchy in my mouth, but I'll not let that stop me.
Kit Kat chunky.
A Kit Kat chunky, yeah.
Yeah, not a crunchy. A Biscoff crunchy would be too strong.
Yeah, pretty tasty. So, you see in Legion, the raid participation numbers, per our sort of standardized method of using raid or IO, is, see in Legion, right? It just goes up.
Yeah.
Like, it goes up, and Antorus is the highest.
Antorus, good shit, like. We're going to the Drana homeworld, of course it was.
Now, you know, Nathria, Sanctum, Sepulchre, and VOI's numbers have went back up to Sanctum.
Yeah, which
but not quite up to Nathria.
Dire.
So I hope, you know, that they're able to keep that going and going and going. Evidently, Legion was like able to build and build and build. And that's what we're going to need to do. But then I guess the thing is, if there's this cohort of players who have really started since Modern WoW, and kind of, as you've said, like they've just got better and better and better and better, that's really hard for new players coming into the game. Because, like, if you started playing in Legion, like, then you've been playing the Mythic Plus system for multiple expansions. You have so much inherent knowledge of how that works. But a new player right now, just starting for the first time, like, all of these do present an interesting accessibility problem for the game, or approachability problem is probably the better word. And again, this is not me stepping in and saying, you know, gut the game, casualize everything. I would more just think, like, because I don't want to change Mythic Plus for the people who like it, obviously. I wouldn't want that at all. But I guess I'm thinking about all these in a very, like, top level, what is the correct strategic play?
And I think we've already,
Blizzard.
And we've already seen them make the correct strategic play. It's just they made the first step on it, which is, hello, Dragonflight is content you can do without getting in a group. True. You can fly around the world and have fun, which is new to World of Warcraft since a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing where I think they know that. I think they just need a lot of time to build those systems correctly, so people don't have to go, well, I guess I have to M+, but then World of Warcraft is a gearing loop, so then you'd have to fix the Primal Storms problem of people going, what? Who's this loot for? This is late as hell. It's like, oh, well, it's not for you. It's for people who are like not doing group content. You go, yeah, well, do you have a pathway for them to learn? And that's maybe the next step, ideally, if you were like, if you sat down and went, okay, what is the relatively detailed plan to success for World of Warcraft as a game? And at some point in that very, very large whiteboard, you'd have a massive circle around a heading that is tutorialization of mechanics and tutorialization of gameplay, because that's the one thing that's left in the community's hands. And it's largely left in the community's hands in every online game, because, you know, you play League of Legends and it doesn't tell you any complex mechanics. If you played League of Legends in Season 1 and then come back to it, and there's the same problem with any online game developing over time, players getting better and the baseline for players improving. Because if you play League of Legends in Season 1 and try to play it today, it's not the same game in any universe.
Terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, obviously literally all the visual overhauls, but it's a completely different game in terms of skill set. I imagine the same goes for literally any game, except for maybe Valorant. Maybe it's less pronounced there, because that was more, hey, here's Counter-Strike with a game-changing different set of abilities and stuff.
It's like it overtly comes with the territory, whereas for WoW, maybe a dungeon is not what a player would think a dungeon is. And then we're in this funny world where, let's be real, heroic and normal. I mean, unless Blizzard were to show some data to the contrary, I really struggle to see how heroic and normal are even worth having beyond the first week of an expansion. It's so bizarre. But we will come back to this. There's something interesting happening in Wrath.
Sure.
Got some more thoughts. Maybe I have an idea. We'll see.